You're about to enter into a new world of knowledge, curiosities, and high strangeness. This is a podcast of Straight Up Strange Productions.
You're listening to Mysteries and Monsters. I'm your host, Paul Bestel. Welcome back to Mysteries and Monsters. It's been a while since we went on the search for lake monsters, and where better to go than Lake Champlain in the USA. Joining me is Champ researcher Katy Elizabeth to update us on her quest to search out the legendary Champ. With hundreds of sightings of Champ going back centuries, I've always thought that if we're going to find any strange aquatic beast, Lake Champlain is probably the most likely place we will find one. Katy brings us up to date with her work, some more witness encounters, and a couple of new projects she has coming up. Before we get there though, as always, you can support the show on Patreon. You can find the link in this week's show notes, or you can go on patreon.com/mysteries and monsters. Mysteries and Monsters is also available across all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and you can subscribe to our channel on YouTube. You can also go to the mysteriesandmonsters.com website for recent episodes, upcoming information, and all your merchandise using the tabs at the top of the screen. As always, artwork for the show is by Dean Bestel. The show is produced by Brennan Storr of the Ghost Story Guys, and Mysteries and Monsters is delighted to be a part of the Straight Up Strange network. Before we join Katy on this week's episode, let's take a trip back to 2005 and a local news report on one of the most notorious Champ sightings in the modern era.
The sightings of a watery monster in upstate New York's Lake Champlain have gone on for decades. But some truth about America's answer to the Loch Ness monster may finally be revealed on a new videotape that purportedly shows the snake-like beast. Well, ABC's Jim Avila joins us now with more about the creature known as the Champ. Okay, you got our attention.
Okay, well,
All
good
right.
morning, Robin. There is something in the water, a camera-shy, strange, wake-producing phenomenon. And now, to add fuel to the mystery up there, two respected, not crazy fishermen have videotaped something. Local legend, Lake Champlain, New York's answer to the Loch Ness monster, Champ. Inspiration for parade floats, t-shirts, keychains, minor league baseball team mascots, and yes, wild stories. This woman saw the monster 30 years ago.
Well, we saw the nose was probably about that big around.
And now, new exclusive video, obtained by ABC News, of something just under the surface, has brought Champ back into the news and back from the memory of Lake Champlain residents.
It looked like this, but the head looked just like the shape of a horse's head.
There have been grainy pictures before, and home video, too far away for any real chance to get a clear picture. There have been hundreds of sightings, sometimes more than a dozen a year. So you got this long list of names here. Who are these people? What do they think they've seen?
These are people who said they've seen something unusual in the lake, something with a large head, something with a hump, some sort of unusual life that shouldn't be there in Lake Champlain.
Reporter Laura McKinstry has been writing about Champ sightings for more than 20 years.
Best guess would be that it is some sort of creature that possibly should be extinct.
The Champ frenzy began in earnest in the mid-1800s when P.T. Barnum offered the audacious sum of $50,000 for Champ dead or alive. Hunters and fishermen came out of the woods, but fortunately, they never collected. And the search is still on, which brings us to the latest sighting by a couple of respected upstate New York fishermen who on a summer afternoon last year captured something on their digital camera.
As big around as my thigh, I'd say.
It made my hair stand on end at the time. It just didn't fit anything, any kind of creature that I'd ever seen.
Now, these two guys are not crackpots. They've lived around Lake Champlain all their lives and were skeptical about the legend of Champ until they saw this mysterious wake. Unfortunately, their story is much more vivid than their video.
Boy, that looks like a serpent.
What we saw always stayed right on the surface, and parts of it would come above the water. The back, or the nose, or the head.
What in hell is that thing?
But Champ is camera shy, and the fishermen say this is the best picture they could get.
I'm 100% sure of what we saw. I'm not 100% sure of what it was.
The tape is authentic. 2 retired FBI analysts reviewed it for ABC News.
I can't find anything in there that would suggest or indicate to me that this has been fabricated or manipulated in any way. However, there's no place in there that I can actually see an animal or any other type of object on the surface.
Just an odd wake that for now merely adds to the further mystery of Champ, a legend that swims just below the surface and just out of camera range. So what is it? You know, and I think most researchers believe that it's probably a sturgeon of some kind, but the problem is that the fishermen say, who are very familiar with sturgeon and fish, that there aren't the right fins, no dorsal fin. They didn't see any fins at all. It looks more like a serpent. So there you go, more mystery.
Well, these not crazy fishermen, as you put them, they did see more than they got on tape. And
they were using a digital camera, and it couldn't penetrate through the surface. They claim, and you know, as we say, there's no evidence that they're lying, that they saw much more, that they saw something that was that wide and certainly 10 to 15 feet long. So who do you believe?
All right.
That's right.
All right, Jim, thank you. And you can see exclusive photos and videos of Champ at our website. We'll have more in a moment. Come on back.
Joining me on this week's Mysteries and Monsters, it's a very warm welcome back to Champ researcher Katy Elizabeth. Since Katy caught the Champ bug thanks to Unsolved Mysteries back in 1992, she's dedicated her life to the search for Champ and spends most of her time on or around the stunning Lake Champlain. Katy, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me back on, Paul. I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, I'm glad to have you back on because, as we were joking off air, most of the time I see you on television these days, and I thought you might have got too big for me now.
No, that's never going to happen.
Yes, it's remarkable, really, Katy, because obviously you were one of the very first episodes I did way back in the beginning of 2019 when the world was a very different place. So it's lovely to finally get a chance to catch up with you because it seems that so much has happened since we originally spoke all the way back in spring 2019.
Yes, there's been so much that's happened, and it goes by so fast. And sometimes I even, when I look back onto certain findings that I've made, I'm like, wait, what year was that? Because it's just everything gets so clumped together and everything goes by so quickly. It's crazy. But yeah, 2019, August of 2019, we got some really amazing sonar images on our research vessel. I spoke to you, I believe it was before that, correct?
Yeah.
So we were out on my Kelpie, the first Kelpie 1. Now we have an upgrade to a bigger research vessel, which is Kelpie 2. And I can talk more about that later. But we were on Kelpie 1, and we were going up towards Westport, New York, on the New York side of Lake Champlain. And the gas gauge on that boat kind of bounces up and down. It's a 1988 Bayliner Capri. It's an older boat, so you have little things that are wrong sometimes. So we were heading up north, and I realized, once I slowed down the boat, that we were running out of gas. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. I had put, I think it was $20 worth of gas in the tank, thinking that I didn't need that much because it's really hard to tell with the gas gauge.
Yeah.
So I said, good Lord, we have to head back because we don't want to take a chance getting stuck out here. So I turned around the boat, and I had my research partners, Frank Horton and Teresa Horton, with me as well. And when I was turning the boat around, they started yelling and screaming, and I really couldn't hear them well over the motor because the motor is pretty loud. And I'm thinking, what the heck are they yelling about? What's the matter? They're like, we just saw something black and 3 feet out of the water pop up. And I'm like, they probably saw the wave of when I turn around, the wave that the boat created when I did that U-turn to turn around to head south. So I didn't think nothing by it. I was like, yeah, whatever. I was too interested in trying to get back to get gas. So we're headed back, and within a minute and a half, maybe even 2 minutes, I look on the sonar, and it was a very sandy bottom. And we saw these 2 long things. And Frank said, what the hell are those things? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it's just debris, wood debris or something. And I took a screenshot of it, and I'm so glad that I did. And when we got back to the dock, I didn't think anything by it because we had taken 56 other images, snapshots of the sonar screen that day. So I had a lot to analyze when I got home. So in the morning, I was exhausted because it was a really hot day. I think it was around 90 degrees that day. So when I got back home, I zonked out, went to sleep, and I woke up in the morning. I'm drinking my coffee, and I'm going through the images, and I got to that one image. I said, oh, yeah, I got to check this one out, that weird one that we got. So I zoom in, and the image on the left, it was kind of blurry, but this long, elongated thing, and I really couldn't make out what it was. But the one on the right, I zoomed in, and I see this head looking at me, and I'm like, am I imagining this? You can see nostrils, these horn-like protruberances on top of the head, like what looked like a head, and the neck, and like the neck is kind of coiled back with a body, and you can even see where there's like these like web-type feet tucked under the animal aiming towards the back. So I'm trying to think, I'm like, okay, maybe these are logs and I'm just imagining this stuff. But when I had the head and neck sighting, I think I had mentioned that in the previous podcast that we did together.
Yeah.
I had I could make out the feature of a really sharp jawline in the shape of a horse-like head. And that's exactly what this was showing. I mean, the nostrils, there's no way that it's, Paradilia, where you're seeing something like Jesus in a piece of toast. You know what I'm saying? So when I saw that, I said, oh my God, I said, I started crying. I'm jumping up and down on my front porch. I hope nobody was driving by because they would have said, what the hell's wrong with her? It was absolutely amazing. So I was like, I really need to get back to the location because I did mark where it was and I knew exactly where it was. I said, I need to get back to the location because the media just started blowing up my phone and everybody wanted to know about getting the pictures, and I think it was a couple of New York newspapers, and there was websites from all over the world that wanted like that sonar image.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm going to go back to the spot because there were people saying, oh, it's just logs, it's fish. I'm an angler on the lake. I'm on the lake pretty much every day. And I know the difference on the sonar between fish or logs. There's a huge difference.
Yeah.
So we went back, and this wasn't until I think it was, all right, so when we got the first sonar, it was August 5th, 2019, and we went back on August 29th. The weather wasn't cooperative. I believe the boat had something wrong with it. I can't remember. There's always some little thing with boats. I think I had to replace the thermostat or something on it. And then we got back out on the 29th, and I took my friend Tawny Porter with me, and Frank kind of helped us get the boat started because it was acting kind of funny. Yes. So needless to say, we didn't stop the boat that day. We just were doing like a sonar grid scan of that same area, and we were headed north, and we got to the location, and there was nothing there. So I said, oh, that's awesome, because that shows right there. It's the same 163 feet down. It's showing the same spot, the same substrate on the bottom. And if it was substrate making some sort of an image like mounded up sand, or if it was logs, it would still be there.
Yeah.
So that was awesome to see that. So I was just excited about that. So then we went further up the lake, and I saw something weird on the screen, but it was towards the surface. And I was like, oh, it must be schools of fish, because I started to see fish on the sonar, and I noticed each frame, they started to kind of scatter.
Yeah.
I said, well, that's kind of weird. And then I saw these two long things, but I said, well, maybe it's the fish kind of bunching up together.
Yeah.
So I saved the screenshot of that. And then when I got on my computer, that's when you can tell better for resolution and everything when you enlarge it. Because the sonar screen is really, really small. So you really can't make out much detail. So when I got that home and I enlarged it, I said, oh my God, I'm like, it's them again. It was the same size animals, the same shape, but in a different spot. And this time they were swimming. And the one in the front, you can actually see an air bubble. It was blowing out. You can see the air bubble rising to the surface.
Yeah.
So, and then you can see the streams of bubbles of that animal as it was diving down. You can see all the bubble streams that are coming down. I was just like, I couldn't believe it too, because I'm like, I could have hit them. Like, they were underneath the boat.
Yeah.
So they were that close. And I was like, oh my God, I do fear that sometimes. I'm like, if their sonar is off or they're just like not giving a crap about something, and if you're going really fast, I mean, there's been stories of people hitting things out in the lake and never knowing what they hit. So that was crazy. I mean, those sonar images are just absolutely amazing. And I know over at Loch Ness, there was a recent one a couple of days ago, sonar hit, which is interesting. But I have to say, compared to the ones I have, it sucks. You can really make out in mine the shape, the solidness of it. The one that's from Loch Ness, I'm not saying it's not anything, but it's very scattered. And usually when you get the scattered type of image like that, it's usually like a school of fish that's kind of scattered all around. You know, there is some solidness to it. But the problem is the sonar screen that they're using, you have different options on your sonar where you can have color or you can have like copper color, or they have like red, green. I don't like using that because you can't get the detail.
Yeah. So
that's the mistake they're making with their sonar. They got to change their screen settings. Then you'd be able to make it out a lot better, you know? So, but no, we were just amazed at what we got, and I feel really, truly blessed. I mean, we had a great year, 2019. It was a heck of a surprise, that's for sure.
I mean, looking at it from the outside, Katy, it seems like there's a real momentum in regards to what's going on with Champ. Maybe that's because there seems to be a bit more treating this subject with a level of respect that we haven't had for quite a while. And I think in parallel with what's gone on at Loch Ness, that people seem to have completely gone away from this idea that dinosaurs are swimming about in lakes these days. And it seems to be more in regards to unknown species that we have yet to document. And what surprised me is that with Champ, I've noticed over the last couple of years since we spoke, despite the fact I was very aware of it and I knew of it, and it was one of my favourite lake creatures that's out there, I've noticed the last couple of years there seems to be a lot more delving into it and treating it with a bit more respect now, Katy.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well, and it's funny because I think with me going out and using the scientific protocol and the sonar, and we have a new ROV now that goes down to 325 feet below the surface. I think using those tools and the opportunity of new technology has really opened up people's minds, seeing the sonar images that I have and hearing the echolocation recordings, which there's nothing known in a freshwater lake that echolocates.
Yeah.
But there is now here in Lake Champlain. So I think it's really opened people's minds up, because I kind of said this the other day to my friend Frank that does the research with me. I said, because he's followed the Champ stuff for years and years, and he's like, wow, for a long time back in the 70s and 80s, Champ was extremely popular. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, it was like when my former research partner, Dennis Hall, when he got out of doing the research, it seemed like nobody even talked about Champ anymore.
Yeah.
And then I came into it and started doing all the stuff and showing the videos and the sonar and all of that. It's like, oh my God, I opened up a can of worms. Now it's like there's people that show up at the lake, and people that I know will run into them and go, oh, where are you from? I'm from North Carolina, for instance. And, oh, what brings you to the lake? Oh, I'm looking for Champ, and I follow Katy Elizabeth. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. They really said that? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, that's so cool. So, just bringing the awareness out there. That's why I do what I do. And I try to participate in podcasts such as yours and do the television programs. It's not about, like I said, off the air a little while ago. It's not about getting on TV or being popular or anything like that. It's raising the awareness of an unknown species that's here in the lake, and for people to open up their minds and to live their dream. Because when I was a little girl, that was my dream, is to search for Champ. And I never thought in a million years that I would end up here living on the lake and doing this pretty much every day. And it takes guts. It takes a lot of bravery to do that, because there's so many people that ridicule.
Yeah. I think it's quite interesting as well when I've read your book, Katy, that I wish my library was as good as yours when I was at school, because to find 2 brilliant books about lake monsters in the school library is quite outstanding. I think we had one ever, and it was just a run-of-the-mill book about Nessie, whereas you had 2 rather excellent editions to kind of feed your addiction thanks to Unsolved Mysteries.
Yes, for sure. I'm not sure who was responsible for that, but thanks to them, it was very refreshing because, you know, I've gone into recently I've gone into Barnes and Noble, and I go in their new age section, and I'm always looking for like new crypto books in Barnes and Noble just to see what the market's like there, and it's like you hardly find anything. Like I think I found my friend Nick Redfern, I think I found a few of his books with the UFO stuff, and I believe there was a book that Josh Gates had done, which I never even knew that Josh Gates wrote a book. So that's on my book list for my next read. But yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. Everything's on the internet now. It's not like back in the day where we could walk into a store and have our choice of so many different titles and genres.
Yeah, it is one of those strange things about bookstores that despite the fact that things like monsters and ghosts and UFOs are extremely popular, if you walk into a bookshop, they'll probably have a handful. And yet, when you go online, I mean, without wishing to sort of tell everybody to use Amazon rather than support your local bookstores, on Amazon you can essentially find whatever you want somehow. And it is frustrating because the next generation of cryptid hunters, it makes you wonder where they're going to stumble across these books at school, Katy.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, you just gave me a really brilliant idea without even realizing it. You know, I should get in touch with some, you know, local schools and try to, you know, get involved with talking to the whoever, I don't know, the librarian that picks out the, you know, the books and stuff and try to get more cryptozoology 14 type of literature in the libraries for kids, because I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's quite interesting because at the moment over here in the UK, we've had a bit of a comeback for a series of books, as we were talking about being kids, which was a collection of books that were under the Usborne label, and they were books that have stayed with me my entire life, Katy, and they were books about ghosts and UFOs. And the one that's being re-released this month in September is Monsters.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's got stories about Nessie and Yetis and Bigfoot and all sorts. And I remember seeing that in my local library when I was 7, 8 years old and being amazed by it. So if you've never got it, I recommend, I'll send you the link later. You'll love it.
Oh, that'll be great. I'd love to read it. That's really cool. And it's so fun, like looking back and seeing something like that being revised or like reprinted, and you know, you remember that from your childhood, and it's like, oh my gosh, I have to read that again. It brings back good memories for sure. Yeah.
I'm sure they think I must be buying them for children, but I'm not.
Hey, we're all kids at heart, and that's the biggest thing. You know, you have to be a kid.
Yeah.
You know, the world is so messed up now, and as you know, with the virus and everything, and it's changed so much, and it really the virus and stuff really did kind of affect my research, because now it seems like as far as any type of like conferences or filming opportunities and that sort of thing, it's really slowed down with the virus. I think this new Delta variant thing that they've talked about on the news, I think everybody's starting to hunker down again, and I'm like, no. and a lot of conferences have canceled too, so it's not fun.
Yeah, I suppose there is one benefit though in regards to this. How was it last year then, Katy? Because obviously you live round there. And I suppose it would be quite difficult if you were sort of crossing state boundaries and travelling halfway across the states to get back up to Champlain. But I suppose with you being there, did it have an effect on the fact that nobody was coming to the area for breaks and things? Because obviously the first real wave kicked off last year. So did that enable you to have a better scope for your investigations, or did you still find it difficult based on the restrictions in regards to what you could and couldn't do?
Well, that's a really good question. As far as how many people that were out on the lake during the pandemic, and especially the beginning of it, I'll be honest with you. I talked to a game warden that was here, and he had said they have never sold so many fishing licenses as they did with the pandemic. So there was far more people fishing.
Yeah.
I'm very surprised that I haven't really gotten any super duper reports. I did get a report when I had my Champ Fest, little type of thing. We had that on August 7th of this year. And there was a little girl, we can talk about that later, but there was a little girl that I had met named Adelia, and she actually had a sighting 2 weeks prior of a champ animal, and she was out on the lake with her dad on a paddle board. And she looked out and saw the head and the neck come up, and she was like, "Oh my God, Dad, look, what is that?" And then later she's like, I knew it was champ. And I said, "What color was it?" And she said it was black. And I said, "Oh my God," because the cartoonish thing that people think lake monsters is they think that they're like lime green.
Yes.
No, they're the green color. There is a theory about that I will tell you in a little bit, but when she said it was black and she described it looked like a horse-like head, I mean, I almost cried. I was like, that little girl really did see one.
Yeah.
And I love the sightings that the children have because they are just so sincere and they have such a memory. And, you know, the innocence of them and everything. They know what they've seen. And she was just so sincere about it and so happy talking about it.
Yeah. I've seen the interview you've got on your Champ page, and it made me chuckle because she was just very matter of fact. And she was like, "Oh yeah, me and my dad paddleboarding and we saw this thing and it was this colour." And did you say it had green eyes?
Yeah, she said it had like green eyes. And I was like, well, that's really observant because a lot of times, you know, as far as like details like that, a lot of people don't recall, you know, seeing like the eye color and such during the daytime. At night, the tapetum lucidum, which is eye shine, is usually like a yellowish, reddish color, and sometimes even really red. But yeah, I was amazed that she mentioned the eye color. So that was really neat. She said it had a little bit of orange on its forehead. And I said, well, that's different. But I got thinking of some reports back from the 1800s. Someone had said that one that they had seen had a star on its forehead, like a horse star, you know, like a little diamond shape on the forehead. So that was interesting. And I said, So all of her descriptions just really hit the nail on the head. And I truly believe her. I really do. And I thought it would be fun to show that little interview because I don't really get kids who have seen Champ very, you know, that was one report that, I think that was my first report from a child. So that was really cool.
Yeah. And I think it's good as well because I suppose the critics would say, oh, well, you know, children will exaggerate. And that's what I liked about Adelia's witness statement is it's very simple. There's no kind of exaggeration. She's not saying it's got big wings and she saw all these horrible teeth or anything. She just tells you what she saw. And I think it's remarkable because often people will always say, children, oh, it's just their imagination. Well, you know, with the greatest respect, that's not the most imaginative description of something. You would expect it to be a fantastical explanation that she'd give you.
Totally. I totally agree with that.
No, she was very, very entertaining. And I think you found a new apprentice there, Katy.
Me too. The future of cryptozoology right there.
And as you were touching on in regards to speaking to the local schools and things, how does the area still view Champ? Because obviously Port Henry often promotes itself as the home of Champ. And I know one of the key aspects of your research isn't just the fact that you're trying to look for Champ. It's to protect whatever this is and also to increase people's awareness and education in regards to the quality of Lake Champlain in general.
Yeah, that's my important goal is to just make the awareness of the health of Lake Champlain because we do have a lot of sewage flowing into the lake, which is really unfortunate. And I try to do everything I can to email representatives of the state of Vermont, and especially Vermont. For some reason, over in New York, there really doesn't seem to be an issue with sewage getting in. But over here, Vermont is supposed to be the green state where we care about the environment, and this lake is such a huge body of water, 120 miles long and 400 feet deep at its point. And it's like, this is our drinking water here, and they're letting sewage get into the lake. It's just unbelievably wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I was very shocked to hear that was going on, especially in this day and age.
It's crazy. And, what really angers me the most is that, there's a lot of politicians who have run, and you go and you run to the town hall to vote for them. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't want to vote for any of them because nobody ever even mentioned the health of our lake.
Yeah.
Nothing,
And it's a real benefit to the area, you know what I mean? I mean, it's known the world over now, not just because of Champ, because it is a phenomenal area that's extremely popular with tourists and locals alike, Katy. And in the summer, it's absolutely breathtaking. It
is for sure. I mean, that's part of the magnetism that brought me here too, is the view is just stunning. And when you go out in the morning on the lake and you have the mist rising up off the water, and the day that we had gotten the second sonar image on August 29th of 2019, we were going down the lake, and I do describe it in my book, the mist lifting off of the lake. It was just so magical. It was amazing. It was just right out of a movie. It was really cool. And you can't beat the scenery here. And it's just so important to me to protect the lake and Champ that's in the lake. These animals are obviously an endangered species. They're not in every lake in the world. And bringing the scientific data that I've collected over to New York State, I did write a law to protect these animals, and it was passed. So that was a really amazing that was really an amazing accomplishment for me to have a law passed to protect lake monsters. So that was a big surprise.
Well, I hope you've got the certificate next to your one from the Guinness Book of Records.
Yes, I've got everything on my wall.
Well, so you should, Katy. It's something to be extremely proud of. And I think it also shows that you're not just in it for the monster. You're here for the area and the ecology of the area, which is something that I think often gets overlooked when we talk about mysterious creatures. I think people just look at the creature and not its surroundings. And I think if we are to try and find anything like this, then we have to really take care of what we're doing to the areas these creatures are supposed to inhabit.
Absolutely agree. And I'm an angler on the lake as well. And I had a friend of mine just pop by a little while ago because we had a little thing happen with the new research vessel. We had to replace a thermostat, and then there was some oil and some gas that was over near the bilge area of the boat. And I said, oh my God, I hope the motor's not leaking. So he popped by to check that out, and it's not leaking. I think it was just some old gas or something that was in the front of it before I bought it, because I haven't had it that long. That kind of like, when we put the boat down the boat ramp, it was up in the front and it kind of leaked back towards where the bilge pump is. So he was here, and he said, oh, I almost got arrested the other day. And I said, what the heck did you do? And he said, well, there was these people down fishing, and the guy just threw all of his trash right on the shoreline and was going to leave. And I said, pick your crap up. So he yelled at the guy, and the guy's like, well, I'm not picking it up. So he ended up throwing him off the bridge into the creek. And he threw the garbage over the side of the bridge, and it landed in the water next to him. And he says, now that you're down there, you can pick up your trash. So, I honestly, I wasn't afraid to get arrested. I would have done the same thing. But I told a lot of people off, believe me, I'm like, you need to pick up your stuff because our lake is bad enough.
Yeah.
And needless to say, the cops blocked the road off and talked to him. But the guy did end up getting a $500 fine for littering. The garbage was still following him as he's drifting down the creek. So, so like my friend Todd said, he said, "Welcome to Vermont. Go back wherever the hell you came from." So we have a lot of great stewards for Lake Champlain and the health of it here. All the locals really do a great job in doing their best to keep the garbage at bay, so to speak.
Yeah. So why did you end up having to replace Kelpie then? Because obviously I've seen footage of Kelpie too, and I know you're on about you're hoping for next year to try and start doing some tours and taking people out onto the lake in regards to doing some monster spotting, Katy. So what happened? Was Kelpie holed beyond all repair, or did you just fancy an upgrade?
I just wanted to do an upgrade so I would have more room for equipment. Kelpie 1 ran fine. It's an 88, and actually the newer boat's older. It's actually an 84. So it's an older boat, but it's got much more room, and also the motor itself is a Volvo Penta, and the Volvo motors are fantastic. They run forever, and it doesn't have a lot of hours on the motor. Yeah. It was pretty much like it's like a brand new boat, really. And they kept it inside. They took wonderful care of it, and I really scored a good deal on it. So I wanted something bigger that I could do my research tours, my taking people out and showing them different locations where Champ has been seen, showing them how to use the equipment, the sonar, the hydrophone system, the ROV as well. So I needed something bigger with a cabin where I could accommodate more people. And then also to spend overnight on the lake. It's so much more comfortable now to have a place to sleep where you're not out in the open air if it starts kind of raining out. Yes,
I can imagine.
It's so cozy now because I have this little, when you walk down into the cabin and you go to the left, there's the little galley, the kitchen area, and on the side of that there's a little cubby hole, and I have my fluffy down comforter, well, not a comforter, it's like a mattress pad. Yeah. It's like one of those down feather beds.
Yes.
So I have one of those in there, and I've got my lake monster pillows and all of that stuff. So it's really nice, and I try to decorate it with the theme of Champ. I have a the Nessie ladle that they had online.
Yes.
I have one on in the galley area there too, and I have some Nessie salt and pepper shakers that I got on eBay that came from the UK. I ordered them specifically for the galley. So Kelpie 2 is all decked out. I even have LED lights that go underneath the bow part of the side of the cabin, and they change color. So you have different remotes to change the color and the mood lighting. So I'd say it's pimped out pretty well.
Good. What I'm interested in, Katy, because obviously it's very easy to kind of think, oh, well, when you go out, you must do everything at once. But obviously that doesn't make any sense. So when you're planning your investigations and do you break it down into doing it on certain days? So as you've mentioned, you've got the ROV now. So do you do days where it's just using the ROV? And is it days where you do sonar scanning of certain areas? Or do you try and do different things on the same day? Or do you plan it to just focus on one particular mode of investigation?
That's a good question. Usually what I've been doing lately, I used to kind of mix it up when I went out there. I do a little bit of the sonar, then I do the hydrophone and the underwater cameras and all that. And I do them kind of all out, not at once, but maybe an hour of sonar, an hour of this. I've been trying to keep it simple now with the sonar scans. So we traveled about 45 miles day before yesterday with Kelpie 1. We took her out because Kelpie 2 had a little repair that needed to be done. So we took her out, and like I said, we did 45 miles of the sonar readings as scans. And I was going to use the ROV, but then I was like, I really need to focus on the sonar stuff first because it can get kind of confusing. And then when you get in certain areas, the clarity is not that great. So I try to focus at one task at a time. So this past expedition a couple days ago, I just did the sonar scans. I did do a little bit of hydrophone work for about an hour.
Yeah.
But the rest of the time, I think we're out there 6 hours. We did about 5 hours of the sonar scans and 1 hour of the hydrophone, which we didn't get anything on the hydrophone, unfortunately. But I always say to myself, you need to stop feeling so spoiled or being spoiled, because every year I've managed to get something.
Yeah.
And I just know that it's not going to happen. I'm not going to get them on the sonar every time I go out. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I need to be realistic with that. I'm like, damn it. Every time I go out and I don't get anything, I get so disappointed. But I need to just calm down. It'll happen when it happens, and it's time.
Absolutely. And I think credit to you, Katy, because it's easy to start chasing things, especially when you've had the results you got in 2019, and as we've mentioned, you've got the ultra low frequencies that you recorded a few years ago as well, which is a fascinating thing, because that's just, when you hear that, and I know I've heard you describe that the first time you realised what you were listening to, it made the hairs stand up on the back of your neck.
It sure did, and it's amazing because, you know, for the most part with the echolocation, and you have the clicking, it's usually the same pattern, the click, 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 click. But the first recording that we made in 2014, that was like a brrr noise, and it was strange. And then when I filmed with NBC a few years back, we had gotten the typical click, 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 click echolocation in the part of the lake called the Narrows. And where we were, it's like a really, really deep channel, and it goes down to 375 feet. So in that spot, I thought it would be a great place because it's very narrow, and any sound that's down that lake, even if it's 5-6 miles, that sound is going to travel down that channel, and it's going to compress the sound to funnel right to the microphone.
Yeah.
So that worked out well, and I didn't know when we were filming that day that I actually got echolocation until later. I was listening to the recordings because I had like 3 cameras in my face, all these people talking, and I couldn't really concentrate on what I was listening to. And I remember on the show, if you watch that clip, First Look NBC,
yeah,
I did say on there, I said, oh, well, that was kind of strange. Right there is when I got it. I knew I heard something different, but I wasn't sure because I had so much distracting me.
Yeah.
And then shortly after that, we heard this noise, and I said, what the hell was that? It sounded like a whale. It really did. And I have never, ever heard that before. Yeah. So I believe that these animals have a complex language. You know, it's when I've had someone say in the past, you know, well, that sound she got's not echolocation. So they're just like every other animal in the animal kingdom. They have a language. It's like saying, here's an example. Okay. So I'm out in the woods somewhere and I'm going, help, help. Is that all that I'm capable to say is help?
Yeah.
We have a language. Help, I'm out here. You know, I mean, it's just silly. I mean, and I'm sure that these animals give off infrasound, and infrasound is a frequency that is beyond the human capable of, you know, people hearing, beyond the human ear. Like people cannot hear infrasound. And there's been studies done, bioacoustic studies with giraffes, where they give off such a low frequency or such a high frequency, it gets to the point where if it's infrasound, people can't hear it, and the hydrophone systems, the recording systems, can't even pick it up.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to it, and I don't believe that they just say one thing. I mean, they have to have a language, and I'm sure like the ultra low frequency recordings, they travel further in water.
Yeah.
And those are probably for breeding purposes, or it could be for, basically for, just saying, hey, this is my territorial reasons.
Yeah.
This is my territory, you know, and those sounds would travel further for that purpose, to alert the other animals of that species, hey, this is my turf right here. Stay out of my turf.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. And you know, bioacoustics, which I've studied a lot of it's not studied. You know, nobody ever knew that you know, alligators vocalized underwater.
Yeah.
And that's something that's been recently discovered. So there's a lot to it and so much more to find out.
So obviously, as we were joking at the beginning, and we've mentioned it, I was always pleased when I see anybody I've got to know over the time I've been doing my show, Katy, that one of my favourite shows during the pandemic has been Josh Gates's latest Expedition X. And obviously they did an episode on Lake Champlain, which was interesting for a couple of reasons. Firstly, you were in it, but also I've noticed that there are quite a few reports of creatures coming on shore, which is obviously something that has some parallels with very early reports of Nessie, which are almost unheard of these days. So what's your thoughts in regards to that, Katy? Because obviously that's not what some people would presume is going on in Lake Champlain when it comes to Champ.
Well, the funny thing with the Champ sightings is that growing up when I was doing all the studies and reading Joseph Zarzinski's book, Champ Beyond the Legend, which he has a great log in the back of tons and tons of reports that he gathered at that point, you don't really see anything about the land sightings. And, I remember I was doing, I think it was On the Trail of Champ for Small Town Monsters, and they had one of the episodes that they had done on YouTube, and someone had said that I was making it up, that there was never any land sightings of Champ, and that I was copying the stories from Loch Ness. And I'm like, listen, I have people all around me where I live that are locals, and they feel comfortable talking to me about what they've seen. Now, where I live here on the lake, there's thousands of acres of marsh system. And I'm fortunate enough to be friends. Actually, the gentleman that stopped by today that I was talking about, his family owns over 300 acres of marshland down the street.
Yeah.
And there's been tons and tons of reports of Tapetum lucidum eye shine out in this marsh system. And his grandfather had found, and he had also found these tracks that were going across this path that was like a drag mark, and you could see 4-toed webbed footprints. And my friend there, he's a hunter, and he knows about beavers in the marsh, and he knows the tracks that the beavers leave. And he's like, this was not beaver. I've never seen anything like it. So his theory is that this particular animal was going into the marsh to feed at night. And that's when people were seeing this eye shine. And it's been reported for many, many years. And, it's not something that I just pulled out of nowhere. This is all locals confiding in me and what they've seen in these marsh systems. And I totally believe it, because the marshes are full of food. You have small fish, you have turtles, you have frogs, you have vegetation. A lot of people ask me, what do you think these animals actually eat? What's their diet? What's their staple? And I believe they're mostly carnivorous, and the Tapetum lucidum would indicate that as well, because, alligators, American alligators, crocodiles, they give off Tapetum lucidum, almost the same color eye shine. So using that as an example, they're mostly carnivorous, I believe, but I think they're opportunistic feeders as well, because there's been some stories of people seeing them snatch a seagull off the top of the water.
Yeah.
And alligators love chicken. So using a reptile, an ancient reptile that's been here millions of years, for an example. So, and vegetation, what's really interesting, that's in my book as well, is that they've actually found alligators and cut them open, dissected them, and they found vegetation and even fruit in their stomach, which is really weird, because you would never think that, being a carnivorous predator.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating. I mean, have you, because I know I once saw you I think it might have been on that NBC local news report, Katy, where there was some footage showing of you capturing some eye shine on a game cam. Have you had anything like that caught recently, or has anybody else reported that recently?
I've been trying to set up the game cameras in the same spot, because when I got that footage, originally I had thought maybe it was a boat going by, and this is in a place called Otter Creek. Otter Creek runs into Lake Champlain. And when you hear the word creek, you think of just like a little tiny stream type of thing. This is like a good-sized river.
Yes.
And I would say depth-wise, I would say it goes down to about 20, 25 feet. So, it's not terribly shallow. But when I got the eye shine stuff on there, I first thought maybe it was a boat with the lights on the front at nighttime just going by, because right after I saw this wave crash on the shore, and I was like, well, it had to be in the water. And then I just watched it over and over, and I noticed both of the things that looked like eyes ducked down, like at the end of the frame. And I said, holy crap, they saw the IR light on that camera.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've compared it to boats. I've compared it to geese. Geese do not have tapetum lucidum. So that's out of the question. I thought maybe it was owls flying over. But there it goes again with the wave coming in. It was in the water. And then I thought about beavers and otters, and they do have eye shine, but not 4+ feet out of the water.
Yeah.
I'm just upset that camera did not illuminate more. Because we could have made out a neck and a back and all of that. It would have been amazing. But nope, that's how technology works. You just don't know what the heck you're going to get. And I'm so glad that you remind me, because I have to set up some game cameras tomorrow in the same location. But the problem, I haven't been really, I think 3 weeks ago I set up one of the cameras, but we had so much wind that week that it was like triggering the camera like crazy.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, the way I aimed it, it was way down too far. It wasn't shooting completely across the creek. So I'm going to have to like prop up the camera, because you just don't know what kind of angle you're getting. So it involves so much trial and error. It really does. It's like, now I'm going to have to put a wooden stick behind the camera, and then you have to camouflage the camera so nobody sees it and steals it.
Yes.
So I'm going to try to get out there tomorrow and set up a few different cameras in the same spot. The only unfortunate part is where I had that camera before, it was a little short stump that was on the side of the creek, and it was absolutely perfect angle and perfect height. And unfortunately, this spring, it got washed out into the lake. So we don't have our little faithful stump out there to put the camera on anymore.
Well, that is the trouble you have with shorelines, Katy, unfortunately.
Erosion and everything else.
Obviously, you've got the new book out, which is Waterhorse of Lake Champlain, The Search, Katy. So obviously this is the second book that you've compiled in regards to Champ. How was it this time? Because obviously this is a far more expansive book than your first work that came out a few years ago. So how did you find it, and was it an easier process knowing what you know now after spending so long around Lake Champlain?
That's a great question. It was easier to the fact that I had so much more data, so many more experiences, and so much more knowledge of the phenomena. But the problem is, when you take 8 years of data and you have to compile it all together and explain it the best that you can to your ability, it's a lot of work, So I mean, I have files and files of stuff, and the photographs, the still shots from the videos, the spectrogram from the echolocation recordings, but then you have to piece it all together and present it to where someone's going to understand it.
Yeah.
And that was the hardest part, just compiling everything and making it understandable, but using the science, of course, to explain it as well. It was more difficult, I have to say, in the long term, because it was a much larger book too, 232 pages, and it took me about 1.5 years to get it finished. And I was just like, I'll be honest with you, I was so relieved when I was done. I was just like, oh my God, I'm sick of it. I mean, when you're on a project that long, and it seems like it drags on, and then once I got it finished and I got the proof in the mail, I'm reading it and I'm like, oh damn, I forgot I even put this in the book. Like it's just so weird. It's like you write a book and then you're like, oh, I forgot I put that in there because it was such a long process.
Yeah.
Let's say chapter 2 or whatever, and I'm like, oh yeah, I did put that. Oh good. It's just it's when you have so much information that you're putting into a publication, it's just ongoing. And then when you think you're done, and when you are done, you're like, oh, I should have put this or I should have done that. But that's a good thing in a way because it will be good for a revise in the future.
Yeah. Or Champ makes an appearance just as it's being published.
Oh, God, yes. Well, it is going to be on Amazon very shortly. I did have the ebook version, the Kindle version on Amazon the other day, but unfortunately, for some strange reason, one of the photographs in the Champ in the news section, which was like compiled Champ reports out of all the newspapers, I have like a big file of those. One of the photos appeared upside down in the file, so I said, "Oh no." So I had to take that off and have my format guy go in and flip the picture the other way. So I was like, oh my God, one stupid little thing like that, a picture upside down. So Water Horse of Lake Champlain, The Search will be available on Amazon very shortly, probably in the next few days, ebook version. And then the print version, I would say within probably a couple of weeks.
Excellent. And just because your plate doesn't seem to be that full, Katy, what's this about your documentary?
Oh gosh, yeah. I wanted to come out with a documentary on Champ that showed the true science behind Champ, not just the legend of Champ, not just the stories that have been blown out of proportion. So I said, a lot of people would probably be interested in how I got into Champ, using the scientific protocol, the different pieces of equipment that we have. Just experiences from the everyday search, eyewitness reports that no one's ever really heard of. Because usually what happens is a lot of the eyewitness reports get reiterated so much that nobody really learns about the new reports. That's why I always try to keep everybody up to date on any new reports that I have. Because everything gets kind of like, it's like the Mansi photo that was snapped in 1977.
Yeah.
It gets talked about over and over and over and over, and everybody wants to know the location of where it was and all that. That's great to find out, but to me, it's old news. It doesn't matter where it was taken. They're all over the lake.
Yeah. And
definitely there's family, like pairs of these animals, like the two that I got, they seem to stick together. I think they're a breeding pair. So there's pairs of these animals throughout the lake. So the location of where the photo was taken to me is irrelevant. We need to move on from that stuff and move forward with the search and the new technology and the new plan and tactics to try to, get DNA, for example, or to try to attract these animals up close enough to a boat to get underwater footage of them or whatever, So I think a lot of people make that mistake where they look in the rearview mirror too much. We need to look forward and be innovative and come out with new ideas.
Yeah. I think often the perception as well, Katy, is that, as with Nessie, if you ask someone who's not really into it, unlike us, they always go, oh, well, nobody sees Nessie anymore. Oh, nobody's seen Champ for ages. And then if you actually just bother to do some investigating, Nessie at the minute is having one of its best alleged sighting years of all time. And Champ is consistently delivering, 3 or 4 really good, credible sightings every year, isn't it?
Yes, for sure. Like I said, this year has been kind of funny. I had gotten that one report from the little girl that I spoke with. I haven't really heard of anything fantastic lately, in this year anyway, other than her report, which is a really great one.
Mm.
What does happen a lot of times is that people are so reluctant to tell you what they've seen, and sometimes it can take years for them to come out and say something.
Yeah.
Or years or months or whatever. Say if there's a sighting in July, I'll get it in like January, so it doesn't always come out right away. But once somebody sees the science that I use behind the search and they, they don't feel like they're going to get ridiculed, then they come to me and say, hey, I saw this back in July. And I'm like, damn it, why didn't they get a hold of me at that time? So it can be a little frustrating at that point, but at least they reached out to me, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah. Well, I think anybody who knows anything about Champ only has to look at what happened to Sandra Mansi to be very reticent about coming forward about anything, Katy.
Yeah, there's just like so much ridicule, and I'm so used to it, but I have to say, I really don't get ridiculed badly anymore. You know, I mean, when I first started, it was like, oh, you know, she's a woman and she doesn't know what she's talking about. She's got blonde hair. I get that stereotypical type of thing, you know, but working so hard at what I do and showing the data and stuff, it's really opened up the people's mind more. And I don't really, and if anybody says I don't believe it, I'm like, that's okay. Yeah. You know, skepticism is fine. I don't have a problem with a skeptic at all. It's when people are really rude, I'm just like, really? Like, we don't know everything out there.
Yeah.
But then once I show them the data, then they're like, you know, that's really interesting. And then they start opening up, because I had my event Champ Fest on August 7th.
Yeah.
And we had a great turnout, and it was so much fun. I signed my books, and I have Champ merchandise. I have Champ soap, all kinds of T-shirts.
Yeah.
And I met so many great people. And the funny thing was, there was a woman that showed up, and I had remembered her from Champ Day that I used to attend. And I had said to her, I said, wait a minute, I remember you. And she goes, oh, yeah, I'm Penny. Nice to see you again. And she sits down with me, and then she says, you wouldn't believe what I saw a couple of months ago out on my boat. And I said, I didn't even know you had a boat. She goes, oh, yeah, I've got a cabin cruiser, and I fish all the time. I knew that she fished, but I didn't know she had a boat. And she said it was like around 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning when the sun was coming up. And she swears she saw a head neck come out of the water. And she goes, I was like so freaking scared. I didn't know what the hell to think. And then it like dove its head and neck down. And then on her fish finder, she saw this big blob. And she's like, oh my God, I tried to take a picture with my stupid phone, and my phone was dead. And I was like, figures, you know how that goes. So, but then I got thinking about it. I said, wait a minute. I said, are you the one who was busting my chops the last time I saw you, and you said there's nothing in the lake and blah, blah, blah? She looks at me and she puts her head down in shame, and she says, yeah, that was me. I'm so damn sorry, she said. And I met a lot of people like that first met me, and they thought I was a total quack. And then they have an experience, and they come running to me, oh my God, I can't believe what I saw. And I'm like, I told you. I freaking told you. You know, so that's always gratifying too, to have the non-believers have an experience. It's really gratifying. It's fun.
Absolutely. I can imagine it is. I think the last thing I'll mention before I let you go back out on the water, Katy, what's this about you digging into one of my favourite lake monsters, primarily because it seems most people know next to nothing about it, which is Memphrey?
Oh, yes. Well, here's the story on that. Okay, so Memphrey is, I believe, the same species as the champ animals, especially being in pretty much the same region area. You know, there's Lake Memphremagog is about 2.5 hours from here, from Lake Champlain. And I've done some dabbling up there with the hydrophone work. I haven't gotten anything up there yet. Do plan on taking the research boat up there and doing some sonar scans and maybe spending a night over on that lake. But there's been so many stories that are so similar to Champ. And the unfortunate part is there's a woman that claims that she owns the name Memphrey. Now, Memphrey is, I mean, it's like copywriting the name George.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like me copywriting Champ. Like, I would never do something like that. I want people to be aware of Champ and the species, you know, and I'm going to sue everybody that talks about Memphrey, and people are like deathly afraid of her. And you'll find little books here and there, like Joe Citro, he did a book on Vermont monsters, and he mentions Memphrey a little bit, but I guess he had to deal with her and it was a nightmare. So everybody has been really, really scared to even talk about Memphrey. And I think it's so important, because I believe they're the same type of animals, and it should be, you know, all these reports that are public information that are in the newspaper, you know, someone should make a book about it. So that's my project. The Serpent of Lake Memphremagog, that's the book that I'm going to be coming out with. I'm not sure when it's going to be finished, but I'm going to be working on that. And I think it'll be interesting. And I think people will be kind of feel refreshed because it's some subject that nobody really, they don't want to tread on the subject because of it.
Yeah, it is a very strange situation. I remember when I stumbled across what was going on about 10 years ago, I was really perplexed because it's clearly a case where there's a lot going on. But like I said, Katy, unless you know much about lake monsters and strange creatures being seen in North American lakes, most people haven't even heard of Memphre.
Well, there was a gentleman by the name of Jacques Boivet that lived in Canada, in Magog, Canada. He was a scuba diver. I never got to meet the gentleman. He passed away some years back. And I really admired his dedication to Memphre. And she was even trying to sue him, saying, oh, you shouldn't be talking about Memphre. That's my copyright. And, I went on the copyright website. There's no copyright from Memphre. So we're all set on that. And if it was, I just call it Gog or Memphre and spell it differently. That's all you have to do.
Memmy.
Yeah, exactly, Memmy. And, but unfortunately, Jacques passed away. I'm friends with his son on Facebook, and we've gotten to talk a few times. And I just want to carry on the legacy of his dad's research, too. I think it's really important because he cataloged a lot of great sightings. And what I would like to find out through him also is if there's been any on land sightings of Memphre, because I have not come across any yet.
Yeah.
And there is a large marsh system around Lake Memphre Magog. I would like to take a kayak out and do a little bit of exploring of that marsh system. I think it would be really, really interesting to get out there and see if we could find any type of drag marks, prints, and whatnot. It doesn't seem like anybody even goes out there. And I do have a drone that I can fly over as well. I'd like to get night vision for that because I believe these animals go particularly at nighttime.
Yeah.
To go, hunting for food in the marsh system. So if I could get a FLIR to attach to the drone, there's another big bill, but we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Oh, well, Katy, it's been fabulous to catch up with you and find out what's going on in the world of Champ. Let's not leave it so long next time, I hope.
Oh no, I had a blast, and I definitely will keep you updated. We're going to do some more sonar scans, more hydrophone work. I'm setting up the game cameras tomorrow. And as far as the documentary, I just want to put out really quick, I am going to have either a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter page for the documentary to help with the cost of the equipment for filming and such. So I'll be posting that on my Champs on Facebook. Basically, they can look up Champ Search and it'll be on that page. And I do plan on having the documentary finished probably by April, I'm hoping. And once it's finished, I think I'm going to have it on Amazon so people can purchase the documentary on Amazon.
So where can everybody keep up to date with your work and see what's happening and follow your reports then, Katy? Where's the best place to find all the info?
Okay, so if you go to Facebook, you can type in Champ Search. That's our main Facebook page. And everyday up-to-date information on the search, and also eyewitness reports that roll in. Those will be on there as well. And then I have a website, but I'm really sucky at trying to update that. So the best thing is the Facebook page. The website, though, is www.officialchampsearch.webs.com. And I have a Champ store if anybody's interested in lake monster merchandise. That's www.champsboutique.org.
Fabulous. Well, I'll put links to everything in the show notes, Katy. Thank you as always for coming back. It's been a pleasure to speak to you. I know we speak fairly regularly anyway, off air, and I'm always interested, and all power to you, because I think your research and dedication to this cause is monumental, and long may it continue.
Thank you so much, Paul. It was great speaking with you again. Such a pleasure.